Just smash me.
William Nicholls here with another wonderful interview. I have my good friend here, and we're going to get into some really interesting things today that I think everyone will get a lot of value from. We're going to be discussing the mind and how it really works both on a physical level and an energetic level, because I think it's really important for us to start to understand the energetics of how things work in order for us to begin to make positive changes, and most importantly, so that we can be aware of any sort of challenges that come our way. When we learn to recognize the patterns, as we'll discuss, the patterns of our own mind, the patterns of our lives, the patterns of how the simulation or the matrix, or however you want to see it, works, we can use those pattern recognitions to our benefit in order to create a better life for ourselves. So thanks for coming on. Super glad to have you here. All right, so a little bit of background. I don't even remember when we actually met. I've started thinking about that with some of my closest friends, and it must have been like 5 or 6 years now.
Yeah, definitely 5 or 6 years. That's so crazy.
I know, time flies. I remember what year was that when I don't even remember, but we've known each other for quite a while, and have seen each other through some crazy times and some wild times and some psychedelic adventures and odysseys of all the kinds. So how did you first start getting into this whole world of the mind, Kundalini, and just self-development in general? Starting to realize, like, I gotta start, being my best version of me.
So I found Kundalini in 2012. Sometime in like 2009 or 2010, my heart opened. And so I was starting to have Kundalini experiences and exploring and trying to figure out what was going on. But I didn't find Kundalini until like 2012, maybe even 2011 actually.
And then what happened?
Honestly, my first class like changed everything for me. I was like, this is what I've been looking for. That when you experience that energy in your body, and like there's other people talking about it and validating that like it's a real thing, that just changed everything for me.
So for those who don't really know what Kundalini Yoga is, can you kind of give like a brief, in like a few sentences, like describe basically what is Kundalini Yoga and what's the function of Kundalini Yoga?
Yeah, so the Kundalini energy, the idea is that it's coiled at the base of the spine like a serpent. There's a lot of things that activate the Kundalini. It can happen spontaneously, it can happen from drugs, it can happen from really any kind of yoga. But specifically Kundalini Yoga is the system to effectively raise the Kundalini energy and allow it to flow properly. I like to think of it as a system that's designed to make you superhuman.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. What do you kind of say to people who say that that Kundalini energy is like demonic and you can get possessed or you can go crazy by raising the Kundalini? Because that's a real concern for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I know drug use and various things can raise it in a way that the body and the nervous system can't sustain, which can make people go a little loopy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Yogi Bhajan said that when you're dealing with the Kundalini energy, you're dealing with the energy of the atom bomb. It is very serious. It's a huge energy, and it needs to be directed properly. So I think that the fear is not unreasonable, but we can take comfort in the fact that the Kundalini Yoga system, the teachings of Yogi Bhajan, were designed to help you effectively move the energy. The problems kind of arise when the energy is not flowing properly. That's why you spin out. But having a system like the teachings of Yogi Bhajan, it's safe. You just got to do it right.
Yeah. And so, like, if people want to start doing this on their own, and I've been doing Kundalini yoga for many years now too, and it's been a game changer. I mean, when you get introduced to it, you can see it for what it is. It's incredible. It really is the technology for the body and the soul, and just for this not to sound too cliche, but new age that we are seemingly moving into.
Absolutely.
So if someone wants to get started practicing, I mean, I always refer them to Rama because of just the vast amount of teachings there. And then if you're in New York or LA or Mallorca, you have access to in person. Would you recommend them kind of go through the same route?
Absolutely. I mean, Rama, for $19 a month, they have this incredible library.
It's insane. Like hundreds and thousands of hours of workshops.
It's unbelievable. And really, like, taking a class is where you're going to learn, and learning from an experienced, seasoned teacher. Rama, the teachers are the best of the best. And taking class with multiple teachers, I think, is really important, because everyone, like, we're taught to teach the class that we want to take. So you're going to experience a class from all these different angles, and I think that's super important.
For sure, and you kind of find what type of current you want after you've tasted each of them. That's what I did when I first tried Rama, and then you find who you really resonate with deeply, because it's totally different. Like, it's a potentially they're the same meditations, and it's the same mantras, and it's the same process of beginning class and ending class and gong and all that sort of stuff. Everyone's wearing white, but it's being transmitted through a very unique individuals that have their own current, that have their own sound current, that have their own energetic current, and that touches you in various ways. And some people resonate more with certain teachings and certain types of teachings, and other people resonate with different teachings. So it's really cool to see that.
And also, like, I think for different things, like, when I need to get beat up a little bit, I take Tej's class. Like, when I'm in my victim thing and, like, I need someone to yell at me, I take Tej's class. Most of the time, like, I'm taking Hadi Jeevan and Min Dave and Guru Jas, but there's, like, a different teacher for different times in our lives, or even, like, different, moments, and so it's important to experiment.
It is. So let's talk a little bit about the world. We'll start with, like, the macro, and then we'll kind of move into the micro. But so what's the matrix? Everyone wants to know what the matrix is nowadays. So how would you, in your own words, describe whatever it is that we're living inside of?
Well, I don't like to say that I live inside of the matrix, but I think the matrix, it's the Maya, it's the illusion. We're all kind of these powerful co-creators, and our consciousness generally right now is being directed to create something very specific. There's truly not that many of us who are actively creating. And I think it's...
And what do you mean when you say creation?
So I think it's the difference between the dreamer versus the dream. So most of us here are kind of unconsciously moving through this dream that we're all dreaming up, but we have no idea we're all dreaming it up. And then once we wake up, we become the dreamer, and then we're consciously aware of the fact that we are creating this whole reality.
Yeah, and do you see that as a one and done process or a continual process?
Oh, continual.
Like yeah, I've noticed that too. It's like you wake up and you realize you're the dreamer, and then you realize how many other areas of your life you're still in the dream, right? Exactly. And then you have to become the dreamer in those areas, and it's like it's continual process, right? It's all, and then it's now we have connection to the emotions and the illusions of the mind, and the illusions of our feelings, and the illusions of all these sorts of things. It's like a never ending process. But I'm glad you said that, because I think a lot of people can relate to that. And I remember in Napoleon Hill wrote the book Outwitting the Devil. He talks about that process of you're either a drifter or you're a creator. You know, you're either creating something or you're just drifting along in the dream, and most people are just drifting. You know, that's and you can see it. Like you can see the difference just in the people's eyes, right? Like you always know when someone's too deep in the dream, and it's not to say that they're not a dreamer in certain areas of their life, because I feel like most people nowadays, you know, there's levels obviously of consciousness, and we have little bits of areas where we're like super open, and then other areas where it's like no, this is definitely, you know, what is this is the reality, you know, and then they're kind of trapped in that dream.
I think that's part of it too, the spiritual process. Like we unlock a new level and we're like, this is it, I found the truth. And then like we unlock another one. So
yeah. And then the macro awareness is just realizing like the fun is going through the levels. And it's all a game anyways.
Exactly.
It's cool to see that we're kind of, I've just seen this wave of consciousness that's moving in this direction of realizing the game and gamifying it, because that's how it should be. Like it should be fun. I was saying this to a client earlier today, where it's like, you know, the process of leveling up throughout the levels should be fun, even though it's challenging. Because like if we just played a game where it had no challenges at all, we just like we're just walking through, and we just like imagine like the Super Mario Bros. Or any of those like video games from like the 80s and stuff. You just like walk from here and you win, and it'd be so boring. You know, it'd be so boring for us. There'd be no fun. You know, part of the fun is the challenge, overcoming the challenge, and learning to appreciate that process.
100%.
So then, how do people begin to be aware that they are the dreamers? Because when you are a dreamer in certain areas of your life, or even dominantly almost all the areas of your life, that's easy to say, you know, this is a dream. But when you're in the dream and you don't realize you're dreaming, that's a whole different level, right? Like that's it. Yeah. And I understand that on part of it, it's each individual's process of, you know, whenever they're ready to start to experience that. But how can people kind of begin to initiate that process? Because I know this is kind of your area of expertise.
Yeah, so I think we do a lot to convince ourselves that we exist. Like we tell ourselves a lot of stories, especially about who we are, our relationship to the world. And I think when we just have a very simple meditation practice to connect with the pure energy and essence of our soul, that's where we start to see kind of all the things that we cover ourselves with, if that makes sense. Until we connect with that energy, like it's an experience. It's not something that can be explained or you can read about. Like you have to experience the energy of your own soul, and then you can kind of feel what you're just making up, what's just kind of being put on top.
Yeah, and that actually transitions perfectly into, because I wanted to bring up the difference between reality and non-reality. Because especially in the personal development game and conscious creation, etc., trying to build your life in the way that you want it, there's a lot of validity to visualization and seeing the life that you want to create for yourself, right? Seeing it before you see it physically in your physical reality. However, there's also this kind of dichotomy that is reality versus non-reality. Could you kind of explain that for people who are not too familiar with this is a Kundalini teaching, right? So can you kind of just break that down for people in plain English?
Yeah, so I think reality is just love. It's just divine love. And anything else essentially is non-reality. Now there's obviously like different rays of divine love. But for example, like if you think you have a problem, you're already in non-reality, because
that's a good way to put it.
Right? Like any problem is just an inability to comprehend the reality of a situation. It's kind of like we have this superficial layer this very like literal, material, superficial layer of things. And that's what most people focus on, but that's non-reality. The reality is the more pure essence of what's under that superficial layer.
And how can so that's really
sorry, hold on. My puppy, 1 second.
Oh, okay. So I hope everyone is able to take this in and is really grasping this, because these are really important concepts for beginning to kind of unwind what is really going on here. There's My Little Pony there.
Yes. She went up the stairs and then she got stuck, so we had to go save her.
Such a cutie. So how can people distinguish? I know in part you said that any sort of problem would be a perfect example of you're in a non-reality if you think you have a problem, and if you see it as a problem. But how are other ways that people can distinguish reality from non-reality?
So
how do we know if we're living in reality versus if we're living in these kind of bubbles that I see as like non-reality?
Absolutely. So I think part of it is you have to develop a strong nervous system, because non-reality will elicit an emotional reaction, right? So really anything that makes us emotional is probably a non-reality. That being said, I think most of us react emotionally to anything. So truly, in order to be able to see reality and understand it, we have to break through that barrier first. We got to develop a strong nervous system.
And then once that nervous system is developed, are you suggesting that the emotional reactions will kind of cease to create as much momentum?
Yeah, I mean, our first reaction or response to something, like instead of going emotional, it's kind of like we can objectively see things.
Yeah.
So even if we don't like it, we can see it. Whereas when we go emotional, we just get reactive and we're like, I don't like this, like, and then our programming butts up against it.
For sure. Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. And that's what, the kind of ancient Stoic philosophers were getting at. And I think that's been taken a little too far in the modern world, because we've forgotten the true meaning of that, which you've just described perfectly, which is to be able to objectively see reality and not, because a lot of people confuse seeing reality with seeing this kind of doom and gloom, reality. But that itself, right, is considered a non-reality. So
absolutely.
So it's funny that you can even kind of go down the Stoic route and still end up in the non-reality, because it's like you can take the emotional route or then you can take the mental route. Either way, you're going to a non-reality.
Absolutely. So I think also it's just interesting to understand that the human mind, the way we work, is we go to the negative mind first, because we have the negative mind, the neutral mind, and the positive mind.
Yeah, I just wanted to transition into that. So you transitioned perfectly into that.
Yeah, it's like first we're going to instantly go to the negative mind. So we have to be able to move, right, to the neutral mind and have the negative mind balanced with the positive mind.
So, okay, so describe a little bit more in detail of the negative mind, the positive mind, and the neutral mind. Because there's a lot of people that think the negative mind is bad, the positive mind is good, and then the neutral mind is just like an unattainable kind of guru state that no one will be able to achieve.
Yeah, so I think there's good and bad for each of them, right? It's very tricky when we try to go to like, this is good, this is bad. Like, that is a perfect example of being in non-reality. Right?
Yep.
So first we're going to move to the neutral mind or to the negative mind. And we need enough energy within our system to be able to navigate the negative mind. So the negative mind is kind of essentially seeing the bad things, right? If we get stuck in the negative mind, we don't have enough energy to get out of it, we're going to go doom and gloom, right? The world is ending. Everything is bad. This is a problem, right? The positive mind, so actually the kind of negative aspects of the positive mind, if we only see the good in things, like, we're fucked. That's how people end up in abusive relationships, right?
Yeah.
It's like,
which that is a non-reality, right? It's like this rose-colored glasses kind of way of going about life.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you only see the good, right, that's a problem. If you only see the bad, that's a problem. We have to be able to see both the good and the bad, both the positive and the negative, right? And then move to a space of neutrality where we're not going to react one way or the other, right? If someone's being mean, we're not going to react negatively. If someone's applauding us and telling us we're the best person ever, we're not going to react positively.
Right.
We just kind of, receive from a space of neutrality and see all of it.
So what are the impacts of someone who doesn't have enough energy to get out of the positive mind? Into just like a neutrality and that kind of sweet spot.
Yeah, so I mean, if you can't get out of the positive mind, that's escapism.
Right.
And you actually start to go into this kind of Luciferian thing where you only do things that feel good.
Mm-hmm.
We can't evolve that way. Like, for example, we don't practice Kundalini because it feels good.
A lot of times it doesn't feel good, yeah.
Yeah, and like we can't approach working on ourselves or our spiritual practice from a perspective of like doing something because it feels good. Like, drugs feel good, but they're not going to give you a spiritual experience. So
yeah, that's really good. I remember Yogi Bhajan talking about sadhana, and it's basically the idea, for those who aren't familiar with yoga, is you're conquering yourself first, right? It's like if you can conquer yourself in the morning before all the noise and hustle and bustle of the day, then you're able to navigate through life with ease, right? Because now your nervous system's wired. Now your energy's up. Everything is flowing now. When you're not able to conquer yourself in the morning, then life becomes a challenge, and then you get stuck in what we were just describing, those non-reality bubbles, and that's that's chaos, and you're just living in this perpetual, you're just bouncing from bubble to bubble to bubble, and that's how most people live. Okay, so then just continuing to build on that negative mind, positive mind, neutral mind, because I think this is a really important topic that is never talked about, especially when it comes to like any sort of mindset or mental health or anything like that. So balancing those mental frameworks requires obviously a lot more energy than the average person has right now. Like, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So then, bringing in more mental energy, do you think that people, I mean, I've seen this, and I want to hear your experience of, like, people tend to be more wired one way or the other, right? Some people tend to be more wired, and they're more familiar with the negative mind, and they kind of have this gloomy outlook. And then there's other people, and usually, like, the other people are, like, the spiritual types that are, like, this, like, extremely, everything's positive, everything's happy, all sunshine and rainbows all the time, right? Living in delusion land, and kind of falling into a lot of those they are psyops, like it's like these kind of spiritual psyops, right?
Yeah, absolutely. New age poisons.
Yeah, that's a good way. That's a good way of putting it.
All fine.
Yeah, it is. It really is. So going back though to, the difference between visualizing, your ideal reality, or really tuning into that reality that you want to embody in the here and now. What is because it's a subtle difference, right? Of wanting that life for yourself versus moving too deep into the positive mind. Can you kind of describe some of that, like that, just the energetic subtlety of that, because it's very important for people to grasp?
Okay, so this one's a banger. Okay, so I am of a different perspective. I used to be more like, okay, I'm gonna visualize the life that I want, and like I'm gonna get there, right? I just need enough energy behind it. I just need, my energetic body's moving and my chakras spinning, whatever, and then I can get there, right? It's a transportation system. Now, okay, so then I kind of approached the universe and my spiritual practice from the perspective of like, what can I get out of this? Like, universe, what can you do for me? And that's a very transactional relationship to have with the universe and your
I mean,
spiritual
that's
practice.
basically, you're basically defining what could be called black magic. That's
Yeah,
actually basically what it is, right?
right. We all move through that
Yeah.
in order to, yeah. So now I kind of approach things from the perspective of like, how can I connect with the divine will and the divine love and the God force, and how can I allow that to move through me and take me to the location where I am best suited to serve. So it becomes more of a co-creative process with the divine will, right? Because we have desires for a reason. We just kind of have to get to the bottom of what the desire truly is and where it's truly leading us. Personally, I think I end up in the most beautiful situations when I have no idea what it looks like. And I just kind of surrender to the God force and the divine will, and I'm like, take me wherever I'm best suited to serve.
Yeah, that's a really good way of approaching it, and you do feel the difference in that, right? Versus that desiring, which then turns into wanting and needing and etc. Because there's still that feeling of separation, that feeling of lack when you're in that state.
Exactly. I think it's very easy for us to be like, okay, this is what I'm visualizing, this is where I want to be, this is who I want to be. But when you just let the divine will take you and like fully surrender to who you are, you don't need to know what that looks like. And I think it can be like a very stubborn, I'm sure you can resonate with this, because Aries, like we can get very stubborn in our visualization and like
we want what we want.
Yeah. Well, we start to tell ourselves a story and convince ourselves of something. We're like essentially creating a program, right? So yeah,
Yeah, and it's much more enjoyable when you can just focus on how you want to feel now, how you want to live now, and let kind of the pathway unfold for you. And that's the beauty of co-creation. Is there's nothing wrong with wanting things. There's nothing wrong with desiring, having preferences for the things that you want, the people that you want, the experiences that you want to experience, a lifestyle that, like, all those things are good, and because they're rooted in divinity, just as everything is. But the problem lies in, for sure, when we're trying to interrupt that process too much with our will and with our what we think is best for us.
Absolutely,
which is just a tiny little pinhole of what really is.
100%. Because with desire, like, there's a big difference between the programmed kind of 3D human ego will and the divine will that moves through us as individuals. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it can be difficult. Like, the 3D ego will eventually lead us to that spark of divine will, one way or the other. We just got to be aware of that.
Yeah, and if we keep getting in our own way so much, then the road becomes a lot more windy than it needs to be.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of places to get distracted, and
yeah, there is. I mean, everything's designed to distract us, basically, and put us back into the dream. So let's talk a little bit about some of the scams going on nowadays.
Okay.
We both like to talk about scams.
Dude, fuck scammers.
so you know, I'm in mental health, and so that's kind of where I want to start. Is obviously the current beast system is a total scam, right? Like it's not designed to give us any sort of lasting relief. It's meant to keep us in the system, experiencing the quote unquote relief of the system, which is a sick joke. You know, it's a perpetual cycle that keeps us locked in, and not only that, it makes people progressively worse. Right? If it was just a net neutral, that'd be one thing, but it's not. And I've seen it, and I know you've seen it, where it's a progressive degradation of the human and the human spirit and the mind and all aspects of that.
Absolutely. I think the system rewards people for their victimhood.
100%.
It's a victimhood.
It's like round of applause.
Yeah,
you're in therapy.
yeah.
Round of applause. You went to therapy today. You know, you went to therapy this week. You did the work.
Feelings.
Yeah.
You're getting to the problem. You're figuring out the problem.
Yeah.
But there is no problem.
3 years later, still focusing on one problem that you've been dealing with for years and years and years.
Yeah. Well, now you have a professional looking at the problem, and you're telling all your friends about the problem, right? So you're just making it bigger and bigger. You're going to write a book about the problem.
And then, as that's all happening, the bubble that you're existing in of the non-reality is growing and growing and growing and growing.
Exactly.
Right? It just becomes it's a mess. You know, therapy is a mess. And I used to be I used to be like, okay, I'm sure there's use cases and stuff for therapy. I'm sure there was you know, there's certain situations where, you know, maybe talking, but I don't feel that way anymore, because I've just seen the damage that it does. And I've worked with clients that are working with me and then also going to therapy. And unfortunately, the stuff that we do doesn't do much when you're getting that intense conditioning from therapy. It helps, but not nearly to the extent of those who replace therapy, which is unfortunate that this is what it's become.
Absolutely. I think that the most criminal thing about it is like going to an authority figure, right? Who's going to tell you who you are.
Yep.
Like truly, it's criminal, because that's our job, and our right is to discover who we are. No one else gets to tell us.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, there's something to be said about people who support you on the journey, and there's something to be said about people who can help provide you with processes and tools to help you on your journey.
Absolutely.
But that can never replace your relationship with yourself. You know, and that's the biggest problem when it comes to mental health nowadays. Is people are trying to outsource. People are trying to outsource, you know, relief, and outsource the work and dump it on people. If I just go to this therapist, or if I just go to this person, they can solve my issue for me. You know, I had a client that was kind of like that. It wasn't necessarily for mental health, but it was more in business, where, you know, he's always just jumping from one thing to the next. It was like if I just do this thing, or if I just invest in these ads, or if I just try this business model, or if I just do this thing, then I will be successful. You know, then I will achieve all my goals and dreams. But the problem is, it was always putting the blame and responsibility on other people. It was never, you know, if I just commit to this, if I just go all in on this, if I just listen to what I'm being instructed to do by my inner being, that I would actually start achieving the results that I want. And because, you know, he's unable to do that, he's staying perpetually in this non-reality of just victimhood. And it's really sad to see.
100%. So I think it's very interesting. Like, in the first place, right, if we think we have a problem, we're in non-reality. But when we're looking for something to fix us, whether it's a person or a system, like, it's not gonna work. We have to take responsibility for ourselves. Even Kundalini, like, Kundalini will fix you, but that's not what it was designed for. It was designed to make you superhuman, so you elevate to a space where problems don't exist.
Yeah, and it you know, the quote unquote fixing you, you know, that's just supposed to be a byproduct, right? That's not supposed to be the end outcome. The byproduct is, you know, every area of your life improves because you're strengthening all aspects of your being, right? You're equipping yourself with the right tools, and therefore by practicing the right tools and doing these processes, and not necessarily just Kundalini, but any process that helps you to reconnect with your innermost aspects,
100%.
then innately you're going to improve in all areas of your life. But the
100%.
point is not that. The point is to live as you're supposed to live.
Absolutely. Like it's never gonna come from outside. It has to come from within and expand outwards.
Absolutely. So, and I saw your tweet about this the other day, and it made me laugh because I'm always talking about this, of how we're just not taught to use our brains. We're not taught how to use our bodies. We're not even taught how to think. And that's the biggest problem I see nowadays, is we're not taught how to think. We're not taught how to use our body. We have no idea what this vessel is even capable of. For the most part.
Exactly. It's and we're even taught the opposite. Like we're taught how to not think and be hypnotized. We're taught how to not use our brain and just be programmed.
Absolutely. Yeah. Everyone's in this state of hypnosis, which is interesting because when people start waking up, when people start realizing all the programs and the beliefs and all the sorts of things that come to the surface when you start to explore these realms, it can be quite overwhelming at first, to start to process all of that. But that's also why we need to learn how to use our brains. We need to learn what our brain is capable of. We need to learn. I mean, most people have even the memory aspect of that, right? I always watch these guys who are like memory champions in the world. They're able to memorize like a full deck of cards in the exact order that it was, which to me is crazy. Some of them do like 3 decks of cards at the same time, and they remember the every single card in the exact same order. I know. You can train your brain to do that, though. It's so nuts.
But see, right? That's interesting because so the difference between memorization and something like remote viewing, that's not the best word, but like being able to see it psychically. So we have the option, right, to build the mind, which is kind of archaic actually, or become superhuman, where like I don't even need to memorize the deck of cards because I can remote view it, right?
Yeah, that's the cool part, right? There's so many angles that we can approach it from. In literally every area of our lives, and that's the biggest trap that people come into, is believing that there's only one angle to approach it from, right? There's only one way of doing it. There's only one way that I can, do this one aspect of my being, which is crazy. So I want to talk a little bit about the 0 point and shunya, as it's called in the yogic sciences, because when I describe hypnosis to people and to my clients, I basically say like you're constantly in a state of hypnosis, right? Like we're hypnotized by so many sorts of things daily. We get into trance all the time, and not to mention we have all these beliefs that have been programmed via hypnosis, via being hypnotized by the world, by our parents in 0 to 7 years old, our early childhood conditioning when we're in theta. So how do we get into that? Oh, well, can you kind of explain for the people at home the concept of that 0 point, which is just breaking away from that kind of hypnotic state by actually getting into a deeper state, essentially?
Absolutely. I mean, for me, I can only speak for myself, right?
Yeah.
For me, it's that feeling of complete stillness where I am in a space of oneness with all that is. And it's both conscious, like it is a very conscious thing, but it's also unconscious, if that makes sense. It's like just the middle ground of all of it. It's 0 point.
Mm-hmm.
So something that I actually like to do, that feeling, my first breath in the morning, I call it my one breath to complete oneness. So that's the first thing I do every morning when I wake up, is inhale and get to that 0 point, and then exhale. And so my goal is, I haven't gotten there yet, to get every single breath that I take throughout the day to be that. Because when you're in that space, You don't have to prepare for anything. You don't have to think about anything. You will respond directly from your soul and directly from who you are when you are in that space. So if you've ever seen like a master, they have this sense of ease. It's like very childlike. And I think it's also like that feeling where, you know, when you're a little kid and like you just are, and like it's just everything that comes through you is just pure. It's that feeling.
For sure. And I always see it like when I do the shunya meditations and get into that state, I always see the you know, like the matrix is like ones and zeros, right? Like you're just kind of like, that's like the code, right? The binary code. And I always see one. I mean, one is the act of creation, right? Like one is that creative principle, but one emerges from the zero. Like all things are contained within the zero.
Yeah.
So when you get back into that place, you're going back into basically like the womb, right? You're going back into like that true nature that is contained within creation. Whereas most people are operating from that binary kind of code of just like 1 1 1 1 0 0 1 1 0, and so we have little glimpses of that, but they're so fast that it goes unconscious, and all that we're focused on are like the ones, right? All that we're focused on are the actual numbers that is creation, and that is like tangible reality. So the reason why we get into that state, that shunya state, or that 0 point consciousness, is to be able to cut through all the realities, like all those non-realities that are the bubbles. When you're in that awareness state, people call it the witness consciousness, or 0 point, or shunya. There's so many words for it, but it's that omni kind of present state. Absolutely. Where you're actually able to see what's going on for the first time. And that is that's all the power is contained within that state. Absolutely. All of the power of creation.
100%. It's all the lightness simultaneously with all of the depth.
Absolutely. Which is extreme power. So anybody, you know, even considering that, you have to realize, like, basically, do you want to tap into all the power that's available in the cosmos, basically, and beyond, and beyond, and beyond, and beyond. So let's talk about the function, though, of shunya, because I think that's important when it comes to reprogramming the mind, because, you know, the purpose of getting into that 0 point is then to be able to actually observe the kind of disillusionments that are going on within here, right? Because when you're in that witness state, when you're in that omnipresent state, that 0 point, where you're not your body, you know, you're not your mind, you're just observing it all, and you're able to witness it all, then, and only then, really, from that state, can you start to see all the noise and the fuzz of what's going on in your daily life. So can you kind of talk about that process of when you get to that state? It's kind of like, then what's after that state? Like how do you function, basically, you know, from that state?
Well, when you get to that state, that's when you're seeing reality.
Yeah.
Right? So you see it, and then you know exactly what you're supposed to do. It's very clear. And then also, when you are able to see that, you see what is not that, which is all the fuzz and non-reality and essentially everything else. And I think, honestly, like once we get to that point, if you are deeply connected enough to that feeling, the non-reality doesn't even matter. Like, you don't need to dissect it. You don't need to talk about it. You don't need to, like, figure it out. It just doesn't fucking matter, because you know, right? You've seen the reality and you know what to do. Like, it just is.
Yeah, and that kind of transitions into another point that I wanted to bring up, which is the difference between when you're in that state of hoping and wishing and wanting versus that knowingness, right? Which is that, again, that's coming from that omnipresent state. It's coming from that 0 point, where you're not even trusting. It's just a knowingness. Can you kind of describe the difference between, because a lot of people assume that hoping is faith, and hoping is not faith.
Yeah. Okay. So do you know the tarot at all?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So the magician card. So he has the red rose of desire, right? So the red rose, the desire, that's like the initial spark, right? We have to purify that to start the journey. So that the fool holds a white rose. It's essentially the white lotus. It represents the purified desire. So it's kind of like when we're hoping, we're in the red rose, right? And red is that's the root chakra. That's the superficial level of things, and we have to purify that. We have to go deeper. So I think obviously if we're in a superficial level of things, that's like where you get the kind of lack consciousness, like I don't have this, I'm not that, I need to get there. Whereas when we are able to purify that, we move deeper and we recognize who we truly are. And then of course by virtue, the world is going to bend and shift around us to validate reality instead of validating this non-reality, right? That would come with the kind of the hope and the wishing and the, yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the magician, it's also like the, it basically represents the expression of will, which is communication. You know, that at the core of what communication really is. It's the expression, and yeah, exactly, exactly, relay, right? Relay relationship. So, and I always found that interesting because, and going back to 1 and 0, the fool and magician 0 and 1, we all come back down through that process.
You catch that by 0 1.
Yeah, right. It's like we're in that fool state where it's like we start and we also end there. You know, it's the end and it's the beginning, and we're always coming back into that state, which is. It's important for people to recognize that, because there's going to be times where we need to kind of operate from the plane of relaying, of where we do need to operate from that one place. And then there's going to be other times where we need to merge back into that omnipresence. But the real power of the game is being able to stay in omnipresence while, also playing the game.
You know, it's so interesting. So Paul Foster Case explained that in the tarot, between each card is actually a hidden 0, which is the Fool. So the Fool is the breath, right? So, it starts with 0, we inhale, and then we move to the Magician card. And then we're done with the Magician, and then we inhale, right? And we move to the High Priestess. So, just knowing that we always have to move to that 0 point between every step on the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are some ways, like going back to not being taught how to use our minds? We kind of touched on that, on neutral mind, negative mind, positive mind, shunya. I think that was a lot of really good information for that. And we touched a little bit on the brain, but can you kind of give people a little crash course on utilizing the brain? Because I think that's important for people to start to think about.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've been working on that. I've been trying to condense that into words and into things that people can understand, because it's very, like, Yogi Bhajan wrote that book, the Owner's Manual for the Human Body, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was a fantastic book, on the body and understanding how the body and the glandular system and all that sort of stuff. But explain for people the kind of function of the brain, and then perhaps some of the energetics behind using the brain.
Yeah, so I think probably the most important thing to think about is the subconscious mind. Our subconscious mind is supremely powerful. And if we don't know how to use it, there are other people and forces that know how to direct our subconscious mind in the direction that they want it to go in.
And right? It's happening every day.
Yeah. And we don't even realize it, right? Because it's subconscious. And Hattie Jeevan actually said something very interesting the other day, that the subconscious should just be a holding tank, right? So with every blink of the eye, we have 1,000 thoughts that are coming in, and it's our job to pick the highest thought, right, and move that direction, move down that stream, or move up that stream. And then all the 999 other ones go into the subconscious as a holding tank, and then we clear out the subconscious. So personally, I would say the most important thing is to learn how to clear and direct the subconscious mind, because it works for you automatically.
Yep.
If you can figure out how to train it, which is very simple, that's like step one for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's that is super, super essential, because it is the supercomputer. I mean, when you have access to that, it is essentially like having your own little AI in your own brain, that you get to use and wield in the direction that you want.
The intelligent infinity, as opposed to the artificial intelligence.
Yes, exactly. the truth. Okay, so that was really good. I think, again, exploring the subconscious mind and starting to develop a relationship with it, a conscious relationship, is really, really important to beginning that process. Just the awareness that it exists. It's not a theory anymore. I mean, we've known this for many, many, many eons, but now we also have all the scientific backing for it as well. Like, it's very, very clear. Just like it's very clear that it can be extremely easily manipulated by people. I mean, the entire NLP basis is on using basically conversational hypnotic cues to just direct the subconscious. And I've seen it happen right in front of my eyes. I mean, I've watched it happen. I participated in making it happen for other people. And it's just crazy what the subconscious mind can do when you understand how it works.
Yeah, it's really incredible.
Yep. Like any good tool, when it's used in the right way, it's fantastic. But it's also your worst enemy, though. That's the other aspect of it. When it's completely unconscious and you're being run by this. Right? Jung talked about that. If you continue to allow the unconscious to stay unconscious, it'll just run your life, and you'll call it fate. And that,
absolutely,
that's how most people live.
100%.
So, let's talk about some more scams.
Yes.
So manifestation.
Yeah.
I'm going to manifest my dream life. I'm going to manifest what I want.
Right. Well, I mean, this is that black magic thing we were talking about earlier, where it's like this transactional relationship with the universe, right? And that we're not going to grow that way. Like, we came to this planet to attain something spiritually, and there's a lot of places we can get stuck, right? We didn't come here to obtain things. And obviously, like, we want to live a nice life, but the reality is, like, we are prosperous beings, right? So, like, if what you want is to, like, get a fucking money candle and manifest yourself some money, like, fine, try it. But it's not gonna move you to a place where you are actually growing. And discovering that, like, you are a prosperous being by nature. Because once you realize that, and that you are taken care of, and the God force will sustain you and provide for you, you just have to essentially follow your heart. You're gonna get stuck.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really important distinction, because what it is that we're actually after is not the things, it's the states, right? It's the states of being that we get to experience. So yes, chilling in a beautiful car, or in a beautiful home, or with a beautiful view, or in a wonderful pool, or surrounded by wonderful people, all of that is a basically a reflection of our inner state, and we get to perpetuate that reflection and experience it in a tangible way, which is fun. That's part of being human. You know, we get to enjoy those experiences just like we get to enjoy the crappy experiences as well. You know, we get to enjoy all of it, which is the fun of the game. You know,
100%.
and that's a really, really important distinction for people to make, because what it is that you're even after. You know, most people don't even ask, why do I want this thing? Well, I want this thing because I don't have it now, right? Or I want this thing because I don't have it. Do you see how flawed that statement is? You know, I want this thing because if I have this thing, then I will feel prosperous, or then I will feel abundant, or then I will feel like I love myself finally, you know?
Absolutely.
When all those things that we're after anyways are just states of being that you can get into right now and start living from. It doesn't matter if you're sleeping on an air mattress on the floor in a, you know, crack den. You know, you can experience that state.
100%. And the thing is, when you really truly experience that, the material plane responds. Like, it comes to you, and then by then you're like, I don't even care about the thing anymore.
Exactly. And it's funny because a lot of people make the incorrect assumption that you know, if I just had those things to remind me that I'm abundant, then I would feel abundant. And I mean, I've been to the Hollywood Hills. I've experienced those cats and those characters, and a lot of them are very unhappy. You know, a lot of them, they're surrounded by this, and they still feel like crap. So if you assume wrongly that if I just had this thing, I would feel better, you know, then it's just that's a non-reality. You know, you're living in that delusion, and it's just not true. Because I guarantee you, and this is why most lottery winners will go broke, right? This is why most lottery winners will go back to the comfort level, their basis of what they find comfortable and what they believe within. It's like something like 12 months to a few years, back to broke or less than broke. It's because that's their comfort zone. That's what their belief level's at. That's where they feel the most secure.
Absolutely. I think it's also like, you know, a lottery winner might have enough radiance, right, to attract winning the lottery. But if they don't have enough energy moving through the system, they can't sustain it.
Absolutely.
Right? So it's kind of like we have to so deeply connect with the prosperous, abundant, whatever, healthy, beautiful aspect of ourselves and vibrate that so strongly that it doesn't go away. And we get that from like a daily practice, right? It's not just a one and done. Whereas something like manifesting, that's a one and done. It's not a stairway to heaven, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because it's from that false notion of when I have the thing, I'll be happy, and then the transaction's over, and then we all live happily ever after, and my life is perfect.
Yeah.
Everything's perfect, right? Which is just delusion. It's just a non-reality. So I want to touch on a little bit about you know, mission and dharma and purpose, because this is a really hot topic, and people are always, you know, trying to figure that one out. From the yogic sciences and that yogic perspective, and then also from your own experiences, what does it mean to be walking in the dharmic path and walking in your mission and living from that place?
Yeah, so I mean, there's fate and then there's destiny, right? And we can either kind of walk down the fate path. Not everyone gets a destiny, right? You can get a destiny. There's things that you can do. There's mantras you can chant. Sata Nama, if you don't have a destiny, Sata Nama will give you a destiny. Mool Mantra, Fate Killer, Destiny Opener, right? There's things that we can do. But kind of when we're moving through our lives unconsciously, we're on the fate path. Most people on the planet are on the fate path. Once we start to consciously connect with who we are and move in that direction, where we're kind of moved by the energy that vibrates from our soul, as opposed to like what people are telling us to do, or the programs that we've kind of accepted about what we're supposed to do. that's when we kind of start to project on the destiny path. And something, it's a feeling. It's the thing with, in my experience at least, the thing with destiny, it's an energy field. So you can't always explain it. You don't always know what it looks like, right? And I think a lot of times, like, we get stuck in this loop of like, I don't know why I'm here. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. What is my mission, right? That I can't even. I mean, like with uh, being a psychic, you know, everyone wants to ask you to like solve their problems and like tell them who they are, like what their destiny is. And the thing is, like, I will only ever receive like what you already know, and that's like just the little baby beginnings of it, right? Because our destiny unfolds for us as we walk the path. And I think like there's some really beautiful meditations where we can move into a very deep space and connect with our destiny. And it's like we see it, right? But we don't know what it looks like. It's not something that can be explained in human terms. It's more of like a feeling. It's an energy field. And if we just go that direction, everything will be guided and provided for.
And I like that you use the word projection, because I think that's a really important way to distinguish whether we are living from our kind of dharmic place leading us to our destiny, or whether we are living from that more karmic place and kind of just playing out the roll of the die, the kind of fate that we have lived. Because that's the way that I've seen it and interpreted it. Is, you know, it's the difference between basically getting projected on, right, by our circumstances, by reality, by our conditioning, by all those neurosis kind of ideas and ideologies and non-realities, versus projecting outward, which is also the importance of raising our energy and increasing our energy of our body and of our spirit and all of our bodies, because that's really what matters. Is, are you, and you can see it, you know, when someone is projecting, not in like a weird, I'm not meaning it in that kind of context, like not the lower context. Yeah, not in the narcissistic way, but when someone's projecting a presence, when someone's projecting their energy, and you feel that energy and you tap into that energy, and that energy inspires you. That's the difference. Is you feel that, right? You feel when someone's living from that place of destiny, when someone is doing what they're supposed to be doing, what God put them here to do, on a higher level, and they're living and they're choosing, and you have to accept it. You know, there's an access point of accepting and embracing that. 100%. And it's not the easy path, by the way.
No, it's not.
It's a lot easier to just walk the fate path. That's for sure. You know?
Absolutely. Well, it's very interesting too, like the idea of like external coming inside. So if you kind of look at cosmic and planetary evolution, like it used to be that the energy came from the outside in. And like in order to have a spiritual experience, we needed something outside of us. We needed a crystal, we needed a teacher, right? We needed these outside things. But this is actually why Jesus and Christ was such a big deal, because the ritual that he performed in his life was what shifted the energy. So it's no longer the outside coming in. It is now the internal projecting outward, radiating outward. So it's kind of like, if we can move with the energy, it's gonna carry us to our destiny. Like if we can move with the cosmic impulses, right, it's gonna carry us along the path.
Yeah, that's a really important distinguishing factor, because you do notice that when you start accepting your destiny and you start living from that place, not only do you have access to way more energy, that's a huge distinguishing factor too, right? It's kind of funny, because it's like, when you're in low energy and you don't have energy surging through, then you don't even have access to higher energy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And the only energy you have access to is like that kind of parasitic energy, right? Where you can extract it from people with emotional, mental, all the ways. Versus when you start raising your energy and increasing your energy and your life force, This is what prayer, meditation, all these aspects and different various little rituals do, right? It's the whole purpose of them is to increase our being, increase our radiance, increase our energy, and expand it outward. That's why you see masters, you see people that are, you talk about people that, like even in the Bible, they talk about they touched Jesus's robe and they were healed. It's like the amount of energy that is being emitted there is so powerful and so crazy that it had that effect, right? It was able to cut through all the subconscious, all that crap that individual was creating and projecting, and instantly create some sort of effect in the outer world.
Absolutely.
And when you live life from that place, when you're projecting through soul, that's what it's all about.
100%. I think that's something that's so cool too. It's like if we can get our energy so strong and bright, our presence can elevate someone, right? Because like when they're sitting in our energetic field, and it's going to elevate them.
Yep. Yeah, and people will just like to be around you. That's the other thing, is people just want to be in your presence.
Absolutely.
It's so funny. I mean, it's a weird feeling, right? It's kind of a weird feeling to experience that.
Yeah.
Like I had a guy the other day, and he just wanted to ask me a question and just have a conversation.
Yeah.
And then he just sent me money afterwards because he just like I just needed to experience that, and I just kind of laughed. It's just such a funny thing to, and it's happened a couple times, but it's always funny in those moments, and it's not always a transaction like that, but it is sometimes it's just like I remember I was in Brooklyn and this homeless guy came in and wanted a coffee and wanted something to eat, so I bought him a coffee and something to eat. He puts I'm not even kidding, 25 packs of sugar in the coffee. Takes one sip and one bite, does a whole loop around the cafe asking people for money and walks away, and I never see him again. And in that moment, I just had that awareness, right? I just had that awareness, like I knew I needed to do that, and that was like for me, like I just needed to, put some positive, deposit some good positive karma there. And also to witness that, it seems kind of so crazy, and an average person would probably be like, what the, well, what, this guy's crazy.
I love this guy. You gotta look like that. 25 packs of sugar.
I know. I mean, this guy's in the know somehow. Okay, let's talk a little bit about fear too, because I think fear is going back into like kind of the non-reality realm.
Yeah.
Fear is obviously an example of an indicator that you're living in that state of non-reality, because you're now disconnected from that knowingness, you're disconnected from destiny, you're disconnected from God, and you're choosing to turn away from that. So how can people start to transition and practice that? Because to me it's a process, right? You have to get, it's a reoccurring thing that you have to basically reinforce in yourself. When that fear arises, how can people begin to turn into that trust place as opposed to succumbing to that fear and that non-reality?
Yeah, so really, I think it's all with the nervous system, because when you have a very strong nervous system, you can still experience fear, but it's like it doesn't agitate your nervous system, so you're not paralyzed. Like I have moments where I'm like, holy shit, this is the scariest thing in the world to me. So I'm going to fucking do it, right? Yep. But you can only get to that space where you can recognize fear, not be affected by it in any way, and then use that to act in a positive direction, right? If you have a really, really strong nervous system.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Let me see. So yeah, I mean that's an important point for people to recognize too. Is like, and this is kind of what I say to people that are operating from this place, is you have to look at it like in those moments you also have a choice, right? From that mental perspective, because some people need the mental. Other people, I think everybody needs to strengthen their nervous system across the
Yeah.
board.
Yeah.
That's a huge thing for especially in the coming years because it's just going to get crazier.
Yeah.
But from a mental level, sometimes you have to play games with yourself. And one of those games is realizing that, again, you have to come at it from this omnipresent, that 0 point that we were talking about earlier, of being able to observe that, first of all, you are in the game. You are playing the game right now. And the game, the level is, you can go down the path of fear and succumb to that and choose to turn away from truth, right? Because with a capital T, like, because fear is not truth. It's never truth.
Yeah.
It's the opposite of that. It's disguise. And you have that option. You know, you can turn towards that, or you can turn towards truth, which is love and awareness. Just awareness that there is that, hey, I'm living in this non-reality. Hey, I'm living in this bubble of my own neurosis and my own delusions. And I'm choosing to give more energy to that than I am to truth, than I am to the path, than I am to God.
Absolutely.
And that connection.
You know, I think there's also kind of this like fear of being scared or like having fear. And once we neutralize that, like if you have a fear, that's okay. It's not a big deal. Like it's fine. We all have fears. It's what we do about it, right?
Exactly.
There,
and how we respond to that when it arises.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so now we're going to put you on the hot seat.
Okay.
And so basically I'm just going to say a word, and then you just, whatever the first kind of word or little phrase that pops into your head related to the word, you just kind of blurt it out. All right? So the first word is spiritual bypassing.
Oh my god, I fucking love this. Let's spiritual bypass. Do you want a spiritual bypass with me?
Sure.
Okay, it's so funny. Hadi Jivan was actually just talking about spiritual bypassing the other day, right? So we have 1,000 thoughts coming in with every blink of the eye. We want the highest thought. We want to bypass all the other thoughts. Those bad, shitty thoughts, what? Are we so worried about their fucking feelings? Of course we want to bypass. Like, of course we want to bypass it. It's like he gave the example of being in traffic. And like, there's 2 hours of traffic, and you see you can take a side street. So bypass it. Take the fucking side street. The traffic, the 2 hour traffic is not going to be upset. What, you know what I mean?
No, I agree. It's funny when people say that as if it's a bad thing, because to me that's like, it's like cutting. It's the angles, right? It's like you're cutting through the noise.
Absolutely.
All right. Now the rest of them, you got to be a little bit more brief than that.
Okay.
Okay. Ayahuasca.
I just rolled my eyes.
There's the eye roll. Okay. Donald Trump.
Love him. We were so fucking gangster having a reality TV star as president.
Straight up. 2024. Nod.
Current.
Rudolph Steiner.
I love him.
The man.
I'm reading Cosmic Memory right now.
Nice. Pomeranians. Yeah. The medical medium.
Is that enough? You know, he's helpful. But I also, man, I think there's just a lot of non-reality in a lot of it.
No, I agree.
We don't need anything outside of ourselves to heal.
Yep. Joe Dispenza.
Oh, god damn it. Why do I hate all these people? It's not that I hate them, it's just, it's frustrating to me, the kind of turning spirituality into technology in a way that's materialist scientific as opposed to spiritual science, if that makes sense.
The deep state.
You know, at this point, I just fucking laugh about it. Like, I think we've all, like, conspiracied ourselves into oblivion, and, like, it's fucking non-reality. No one has control over us.
Yep. Kundalini.
The best ever. Necessary.
Soul.
Who you are.
Hell.
Here?
Elon Musk.
Armon. I hope someone looks that one up.
Do we have to cut that one out? No, I'm just kidding. A higher self.
Home.
Talk therapy.
Let's talk about our feelings.
Numerology.
A Kabbalistic mind mapping system to help you develop a language with your higher self.
Artificial intelligence.
No competition for intelligent infinity.
Cryptocurrency.
Amazing.
Soul bra.
Oh. I don't know about the drama, but I know there's fucking drama.
And the age of Aquarius.
The golden age. We are so fucking lucky to be here right now. Holy shit. We get to build this. We get to build the foundation for this.
And the Bible.
I think spiritual text can absolutely become dogma.
Mm-hmm. And final question. Did you have fun?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. Always a good time. Always a good time. And so, for those who want to check out Liv's work, you can go to @blonde, or are you on Instagram anymore or no?
I deleted the app. Dude, that's actually something super interesting. I deleted it about a year ago, and the ways in which I have been able to navigate my subconscious mind, it's incredible. I'm a totally different person. I highly recommend doing it for at least like 6 months.
Alrighty. So yeah, you can check her out on Twitter. And if you aren't already following or subscribing here on YouTube, Rumble, or Twitter, make sure you do that so I can bring you more amazing conversations like this. Hey, it's always a pleasure. Thanks for joining me
Of course.
and for sharing all that wisdom. I really, really appreciate it.